Hey folks, and welcome back to the Team JLX podcast, and we are now on episode, it's actually technically episode 72, but this is like episode 73 because I recorded this whole thing, and I just got to the kind of exit bit, I just kind of wrapping up a couple of points, and my camera ran out of battery. Now I thought, it'll be fine, like there'll be a kind of backup here, so I opened it, and there was no backup, so we're going to call this episode 72.8. because technically I've already done this. So the funny thing is, because I don't script anything, I don't script any of the reels I produce, I don't script any of the podcasts I do, I can't script things. I can, that's a lie, I absolutely can script things, but I spend all my time trying to make sure I read it right, and in the end I end up getting nervous and reading it wrong. So what I tend to do is just go in with the general idea of what I'm doing, hope for the best, and give it a good slap. So that's kind of how we roll here when it comes to kind of speaking. And I think, to be honest, it's far more natural for me to do that than it is to read things out. So anyway, it's going to be a completely different podcast to the one I'd originally done earlier, so who knows what might happen. Anyway, first thing I want to say is a big thank you to everyone who shared the last podcast. It was the one thing I said, can you please give this a share? Can you please ask any questions and make this personal? I got 3 questions via Instagram. I got a couple of questions from our team, and it's amazing. I think in total we had 6 questions, and for me personally, that's a big thing, like a big thing to have 6 questions. So I want to say a massive thank you, and I really do appreciate the involvement, and I'm now going to return the favour by answering some questions. Now, before I actually launched this podcast, I asked the team on our Slack channel. So we have a team Slack channel where we do all of our communications. We have kind of a team chat where everyone can kind of communicate, but we also have a chat client to coach. So obviously it's private. And I put in the chat just basically saying, look, I need some help. I want to help the old versions of you, the people who haven't been coached yet, the people who wish they'd known what you know now. And so I asked them, what questions would you like to have known back then? I have so many questions here. And what I've done is I've not whittled it down because I will answer every single one of them. I made a promise and I said I'd answer every single one. So I've written them all down. I must have close to 30 here, to be honest. But what I'm going to do is answer 2 questions. I'm going to answer 3 questions today. Depends how long it takes me. But the aim is to keep these relatively short and sharp. Make sure I give you all the info. And so what we're going to do is we're going to answer the question that came up 3 times. And that was a question on how to determine maintenance, cut and bulk calories. But there was also a second question which 2 of the individuals asked. So we had Dan and Pauline both asked this question within the team. And that question was then, would we rather look at calories over macros or macros over calories? So it's a really great question. I'm going to answer both of those. And then the third question, what I'm going to do is I did this earlier. I've got them on a rolling reel. I don't know if you can see this, but basically you can just scroll up and down. So I'm just going to pull down and then press my finger and I'll answer whatever question is there. I like a bit of on the spot questions. I find them to be a bit more entertaining, to be honest. And you'll get my honest opinion because, like I said, don't script any of this anyway. So let's dive into this question. How do you determine maintenance, cut and bulk calories? The first thing I will say, it's very important to note that so many circumstances come into this. There are so many elements that I have no idea about with you personally at the moment listening to this that I won't be able to answer this specifically for you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you the best possible starting point to set these calories if you have no fucking idea where to start. The aim clearly for me here is to help you to set a base point, and then I'm also going to give you a couple of tips on how to make adjustments if you need to. So the easiest way to do this, and the first thing I want you to do is take your body weight, and you need your body weight for this, and I want you to change that into pounds. So we're going to use me as a demonstration, and you're not going to get the most honest laugh that you got from me earlier, because I said, I'll use my body weight because it's easier, I know my body weight. So I went, all right, I'm 175 at the moment in pounds. But then when I said that, I soon realized that I'd have to work out the maths in my head for the calculations that I'm about to give you. And I think I didn't actually check it. I should have checked it, but obviously you'd have seen me working these things out, which I don't have to do now because I've pretty much remembered the numbers. So anyway, what I need you to do now is take that number, and we're going to basically be timesing that number anywhere between 10 and 16 to give us the calories that we need. Now, here's the caveat. I have no idea how much energy expenditure you have. I don't know what job you do, and I don't know what circumstances you've had before this in terms of if you are an individual who's dieted a lot in the past, if you've never dieted before. All of these things will play a very big role in the calorie amounts that you will require to diet effectively, to gain muscle effectively, or just to sit at maintenance. So we're going to focus a bit on what I'm going to do, but I'm going to give you the caveats for what you need to do because I'm obviously a live example. Okay, so we're going to start with maintenance. Now, maintenance for most people can be anywhere between kind of 14 to 15. It could be as low as 13, but equally it could be as high as 16. But we're going to go anywhere between 14 and 15. Now, if I take my personal body weight in pounds and I times that by 15, again, I worked this out earlier, so it's roughly right, I think. It's somewhere around 2,600. Now, I am somebody who's relatively active, so when I set the bracket for that, again, we don't work in set numbers here, and I'll go into that in a separate podcast, but direct numbers just don't work. We always work in ranges. One, because it's better for your relationship with tracking food and sustainability of a process, and two, because it's fucking impossible to actually track that accurately because food labels don't have to be that accurate either. I said I would go into another podcast, and I've just answered the question. Anyway, what we're going to do with that information is we're going to say, right, well, I know for me that I'm very active. I train 5 times a week. I play golf usually once or twice a week, which is usually 18,000 steps odd. I do 10K steps a day roughly anyway. So generally my expenditure is pretty active. I'm also somebody who is very, as you may have seen if you're watching this on YouTube, I'll wave my hands around a lot. I'm very active with my actions and what I do. So I am someone who tends to burn a fair bit of work in terms of energy. The only reason my maintenance is so low, by the way, so normally I'd have a maintenance around 3,000, but because I had knee surgery last year, I did lose a lot of muscle in the rehabilitation process and surgery with all of that, and unfortunately gained a lot of fat as well. I say unfortunately, it was my actions that resulted in that, but now it's about working all of that back, so I'm working it back up again. So my maintenance is about 2.7 at the moment, and so what I do is I set my maintenance between 2.6 and 2.8. Okay, so 2,600 calories and 2,800 calories. So if you've just worked out your maintenance, I suggest you set yourself a nice bracket as well. Now, I know for a fact this works for me. So what I would do if I were you is this. If your calories come out to say 1,950, I would start a bit narrower with the bracket and I'd start between 1,900 and 2,000 calories. I would then start with the first 7 days of just committing to the middle ground. I would do my best to absolutely nail 1,950 calories. Now, some days you might get 1,935, some days you might get 1,980. It doesn't matter. As long as the averages are roughly around the middle, that's all I would care about, okay? Now, when it comes to knowing whether you're at maintenance or not, you need to commit to this. I cannot make this any clearer. If you decide you are going to figure out that you want to be at maintenance, or that you're dieting, or that you're gaining, fully commit to it. If you can't fully commit to it, don't do it, because it just won't be helpful and you're going to cause yourself undue stress, essentially. So what I want you to do is this. I want you to commit to 10 days, all right? But we're going to have a little assessment around the 7-day mark. So for 7 days, you're going to be similar calories, right? Somewhere between 1,900 and 2,000. After that 7 days, you will have recorded your body weight a minimum of 4 times. I personally like to do it every day because it shows you the fluctuations and you don't have that kind of, what's the word I'm looking for here? You don't have that kind of, oh, I'm not going to weigh in tomorrow and see if it's just more drops the next day. You don't have those games. You don't have that, it begins with A, the word I'm looking for, but it's just not coming to my mind. So we're just going to pass on whatever word that was I was thinking about. And I'm still thinking about it. We don't have the kind of ambiguity maybe of like, oh, is it going to be this? Is it going to be that? We just know if we weigh in every day, we lose the sensitivity. We desensitize to the fluctuations that happen on a regular basis, especially as most of you who are listening to this are going to be female. Your fluctuations are going to be far more in consideration of your cycle, for one thing, the likelihood you have of storing more water and the sensitivity you have to that. And also, when you compare week to week, not only day to day, you're going to have different fluctuations in body weight as well. So I personally like the idea of weighing in 7 days a week because for me, I do believe it desensitizes people more to the fluctuations that you have, gives you more understanding. But anyway, minimum of 4, okay? Now what you're gonna do is you're gonna have a look at that body weight. Now, if you haven't weighed in to this point and you are weighing in for the first time, it's going to be very difficult for you to know if you're at maintenance or not, okay? So if that's the case, I'm going to need you to see out the 10 days. If you have been weighing in before, 7 days should be pretty good for you to see what your averages are like. Here's a caveat and something to be aware of. If you are going to try and work this out, one thing you may notice is that on the first couple of days, your weight goes up very quickly. Don't shit the bed, don't panic. What this will be is that most of the time when people start a new diet phase or a new phase of eating or maintenance or whatever it is they're doing, most times people will eat healthier food, which you're like, well, obviously, but because people eat healthier food, they tend to eat more of it, which means if I were to take all of the food that you eat today and I were to give it to you when you're stood on the scales, and then I give it back, and then I give you all the food that you would eat if you were trying to eat healthier and you were trying to go through maintenance to figure out fat loss, the weight of the food that I would give you second would likely be far more because you'd have more volume. You'd be like, right, I'm going to eat more veggies, I'm going to eat more lean meats, I'm going to probably not have that, that bag of crisps or this or that. I'm just going to have a smaller portion of crisps, those kinds of things. So what you end up doing is you end up eating more weight of food. That's one thing. Secondly, most of you will not have a consistent intake of carbohydrate. You'll just eat more at certain points. But when you start tracking and you start trying to eat in a more, I'm going to say athletic way, a way to support performance, you'll notice you eat a lot more carbohydrate. Carbohydrate comes with water. So it's a trade-off everyone has to make, it's physiology. Essentially, for every gram of carbohydrate that we consume as individuals, we will also take in 3 to 5 grams of water. So if your carbohydrate target for the day is around 200 grams, you could easily be taking in between 600 and 1 litre. So 600 millilitres and 1,000 millilitres of water per day. Automatically, when you consider that, well, a litre, that's a kilo. So when you start this, it's very likely your weight will go up. Now, the difficulty a lot of people have is they panic. They panic and they go, right, I need to go into a deficit. I need to restrict calories now because this isn't working. That's not the way to do this, because what you'll do is you'll go into a deficit and then your weight won't shift, because what you'll have done is you'll have caused your body a huge amount of stress, because that's what dieting does. Cortisol, which is the stress hormone, gets released, i.e. we get stressed, we get cortisol. Cortisol is well known to also lead to water retention. So you get more water retention for less calories and all of a sudden you think you've just gained weight and it's never going anywhere. That's concerning, right? No, it doesn't have to be, but your brain and anxiety will make that a much bigger thing than it really is. And it will make this whole process really unenjoyable. That's why at the start I specifically said, make sure if you're gonna go for this, you go for it. So as I was saying, what we have then is a calorie amount, which is roughly between, I think I said, did I say 1900 and 2000? I think I did. So you've got that calorie amount, and that would be your maintenance calories. Now, as I said, if you are doing that for 7 days because you've already weighed in, you start losing weight and you are hungry, and it's physiological hunger, not boredom hunger and things like that, then what you can do is say, right, I'll see this through to 10 days. If I'm still losing weight, what you can do is say, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to increase this by, and there is a scientific way of doing this, but typically I like to get at least 3 weeks worth of data for this. But if you are losing weight and you're hungry, you probably don't want to wait 3 weeks. So what I would do is I would say, okay, I probably misinterpreted or maybe underestimated how much expenditure I have. So if I did 15, say, on the calculation, what I might do is I might change that to 17. I'll redo it. Okay, now it's giving me between 2,100 and 2,200. Okay, well, I'm a little bit nervous about that because most people tend to be when you tell them they need to eat over 2,000 calories for the first time. Well, I'll see what happens. So you go to 2,100, you do that for 10 days, and you may find you're all nice and dandy, your maintenance, happy as Larry, right? So that's what I would do. If you were trying to diet, now, if you are trying to do a mini cut, which is a much more fast-paced diet, but it's also much shorter, what I would do is I'd say usually 10 or 11. Now, for me, I know that 10 is the perfect calculation to get my mini cut calories. I will lose roughly 2 pounds a week if I go at 10. So if I go to 1,700 to 1,800 calories, which I have to diet a little bit more abruptly than most people, truth is I always have done, and I've also been a bit unfortunate in that I can't tend to get my calories that high either, so I live in this little mini area in the middle. So me laughing at myself, I'm just feeling sorry for myself, all right? That's what it is. I just wish I could be one of those people who's like 3,500 calories every day, loving my life, you know how it is, but I'm not, and I'm not that person, and I can't do it, so I'm just feeling sorry for myself. But anyway, what I would do then is I would say, okay, well, if I go to 1,700 to 1,800 calories, then I know for me that's going to be perfect for my mini cut. And I know that that's a 10. That's a times my body weight by 10. It gives me the middle ground. Equally, if I was trying to just run a normal diet, I would times my my body weight by 13, but my lower side of the bracket would be 12. So if I times my body weight by 12, I haven't actually worked this out yet, so we'll do that together. So I'm that's 175 pounds, times it by 10, I get 1,750 calories. 10% of that is 175, times that by 2 is 350, add that back. So I'm 2,100 basically, it's actually 2,090. Which actually is about bang on, because I swear on my life, I didn't do this in the first video because I was already doing the maths for the other bit, but that's actually smack bang. So I've been dieting recently and my calories have been 1,900 to 2,100. So that's pretty much spot on. And like I said, if I use the bottom end, which is that kind of 2,100 area, that would be enough for me to lose pretty good weight. But given what I said earlier with the surgeries and things like that, it has meant that I have to push a bit more, which is why I've had to go kind of 1,900 to 2,100. But I've seen a significant amount of weight loss with that, so I'm pretty happy, and I'm sure that you would too. Now, that covers off dieting. If you are somebody who hasn't dieted before, I would 100% recommend doing a 6-week block at maintenance. Do a 6-week block at maintenance, learn how to track calories, learn how to look at data, learn how to take measurements. Because if not, you're going to go into a fat loss phase, and I hate to break this to you, but you're probably going to do a really shit job. The thing is, people are so impatient because they need that fat loss now. That was a really aggressive click, wasn't it? Woohoo! Kind of hurt my finger a little bit. They need that fat loss now, but the quicker you get something, the faster it gets taken away from you in this situation. Learn. Get some skills, and those skills will massively help you when it comes to dieting. So anyway, if you've done that, brilliant. You've done your 6 weeks, then you dive in. You've obviously got a good idea of where your maintenance are. You can just take 500 calories off that maintenance, and it would give you roughly half a kilo of fat loss a week. Obviously, if you weigh 60 kilos, that's nearly 1% a week, so that's pretty quick. If you weigh 50 kilos, that is 1%, that's very quick. So you do have to judge that up. You know, you probably want to set a bracket between 300 and 500 calories of a deficit. So as we discussed earlier, if your maintenance was 2,000 calories, you'd probably set your bracket between 1,500 and 1,600, and that would give you a really nice deficit to both enable sustainability, but also some really good results as well, which, let's be honest, that's why we're here. Now, gaining. If you've never been at maintenance before and you're listening to this thinking, I really want to gain some muscle, don't drive straight into a gaining phase, because this is what happens to most people and they get scared of them, but it's just because they did it wrong. And that's 99% of the time what happens with nutrition. People do things wrong and then they're scared to ever do them again. So just don't do it wrong, do it right. It sounds easy, doesn't it, when I say it like that? But I'm about to give you exactly how to do it so we can make it easier. What I would do is this. I would do the 6 weeks at maintenance first. Again, learning how to track, learning how to do these things. Then what I would do is then I would add 5% of your calories back. So again, using the example I had earlier, 1,900 calories to 2,000 calories. If we take 10% and half it, 10% is 2,000, is 200. Half that is an extra 100 calories. So we need to go 100 calories over that. So I wouldn't personally be setting my calorie bracket between 2,000 and 2,100, because if you get the average in the middle of that, 50 calories isn't enough to put you in a gaining phase. It's just going to do nothing. And for a lot of people I know who are going through longer term gaining phases, it tends to cause a little bit more disruption later on, because what you'll end up doing is having to eat kind of 3K. And I said earlier, I'd love to do that, but I also eat a lot of food and I like food loads. But if you're relatively small as an individual, whether it's female or male, you will struggle with 3,000 calories every single day because it's tough. Now, when you are, I'm just wondering which way to go here, and you can see my brain cogs ticking over. let's just scrap that last bit that I was going to say, because I don't think that's actually relevant, and I'll probably do a whole other podcast on that. So I was going to talk about the increments of how you would do the calories for the gaining phase, but I'm going to talk about that in a separate one, because I could literally talk about that for another 20 minutes, and the whole aim is to try and keep these short and sharp. So with the calories, aim for an extra 5%. Do that for 10 days. If nothing is shifted, nothing's moved, add another 5% and go from there. Again, what I would do is set the bracket so it would start at 2,100 and it would go to 2,200. Now you might be saying, well, hang on a minute, Xander, that's 10%. Yeah, maybe. So what I would do is just at the first 10 days, I would start at the average being 2,100. But it's much easier to do that when the lower end of the average is 2,100 and the upper end is 2,200 versus saying the lower end at 2,000 versus 2,100. Why is that? Personally, I believe it's because a lot of people who start gaining muscle are still quite fearful and they struggle with the increments that they see on the scale. So they don't really commit into it. So it's easier for them to say, hey, I'm in the bracket. And I'm like, yeah, but you're eating 2,000 calories. You're eating that at maintenance. Yeah, but I'm in my gaining calories now. So kind of a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy, a little bit of self-sabotage maybe, but I do personally find get over the calories, get over the maintenance bracket into a really clear gain, and then commit into that. If you are somebody who's tracked loads before, happy as Larry with the process, and you just want the calories, I tend to go for 17 as a good start point. So for me, let's calculate this. So 17 for me, this is going to be tough. Would be 1,750 would get me to 10, and then I need 7 7s of 49, 7 5s of 45. So that'd be, so my gaining calories, I think, roughly put me out, here we go, 490 plus 350, which is 730 plus that back. So my gaining calories, I'm struggling to work this out now. My gaining calories are roughly around 2,800 to 2,900 at the moment. I know if I ate 2.9, I'd be gaining. If I ate 2.8, I think that could be touch and go. I think for the first couple of weeks it would be. It's just whether or not that would carry, because my metabolism would adjust. It would go positively just like it goes negatively, and it would go from there. So there you go. That's how you work them out. That is the most straightforward way. It's a simple calculation of taking your body weight in pounds, timesing it by either 10 to 13 for diet phases, 14 to 16 for your maintenance, and then kind of 16 to 18 for your gaining phases. Typically, I think 17 is a pretty good number for most people to start. And then, of course, if you pause on the 16 to 17 or 18 area, add 5% from there. Now, the next question, and I am going to answer this one pretty quickly. The next question was macros over calories or calories over macros. We always go calories over macros, always, because that is what will dictate the goal. However, if you don't use optimal macros, you can't expect an optimal result. So if your goal is weight loss, and this is the easiest one here, and you don't eat any protein, you're not going to maintain muscle mass or potentially grow muscle mass, which is very plausible for most people in fat loss phases. What's going to end up happening is you're going to lose a load of weight, but you're going to also lose a load of muscle, which means all you're going to do is take your current composition and make your body smaller with the similar composition. Most people, when they go for a fat loss phase, the number one goal for those individuals is to lose body fat, not just weight. We want to maintain muscle mass. And so if you want to do that, you need calories. You need calories to lose the body weight, but you need macros to maintain the structure of your physique. So bear that in mind. However, above all of these things, sustainability needs to be there. And within the team, one of the things I like to kind of say to people is give me 80% protein and don't worry about the calories if it's a weekend thing. So depending on the person I'm working with, if they're fairly newer or they have a very restricted lifestyle in terms of they're a parent, they've got like 2 jobs or just loads of stuff going on, and we're trying to limit the amount of stress those individuals are feeling, what I tend to do is say, look, structure me as much of the week as possible. So it might be, Monday to Friday, we've got a very easy structure. We get up, we go to the gym, we go to work, we come home, blah, blah, blah. Right. Monday to Friday, we can absolutely smoke our macros. We can smoke our macros, we can smoke the calories, easy peasy. And it's like I said to most people, if you're going through the effort of working out the calories, the macros are pretty simple to do. They take a couple of weeks to maybe iron out a little bit, but after that, you should be absolutely fine. The weekends, however, if you want to do the 80% calories rule, which is I'm going to nail 80% of my protein and I'm going to nail the calories, what it gives you is an opportunity for usually an extra 100, 150 calories for fats and carbohydrates, because you're going to lower the protein a little bit, but it gives you so much flexibility, because what I tend to say is give me 80% of the protein and the calories, but I don't mind the distributions of fats and carbohydrates. Now, this actually opens up a whole new range of foods for a lot of people, because maybe you're someone like me who loves a croissant. FYI, the co-op ones tend to be the best, the chocolate ones, with a little bit of chocolate on top and the chocolate in the middle. Absolute chef's kiss on the... Actually, full stop, Co-op Bakery is so legit. If you're in the US listening to this, I'm sure you've got your go-tos. But the Co-op here, they have such a good bakery. The Tesco's have a good bakery, to be fair. I don't mind a Tesco bakery, but the ones in the Co-op always seem to be warm and it always seems to be fresh, which when you're having a chocolate croissant, it's really fucking priceless, just saying. Shout out Co-op, not a sponsored ad. If you're having a chocolate croissant, right, yeah, they're probably 358 calories. I know this because I had one recently and I put them in my Fitness Pal. I've actually had loads because I love them. As a calorie amount, that's 25% of most of your fat loss calories, because most of you will be dieting on 1600 to, well, most of you, anywhere between 1400 and 1700, I'd say, for most women. If you do that, that's 25% of your calories. It's got next to no protein in it, and the fats are quite high. So if you look at that in a macro food, it's not very helpful. But if we remove the macros and we say calories and protein, all of a sudden you've opened the gateway to have a food you really love, knowing you're still nailing the process. If I'm honest, 2 days a week of lower protein, it's not going to be the end of the world by any stretch of the imagination. Is it ideal? Yes, possibly for you. Possibly is absolutely ideal. One of the things I like to say to people is this. If you're a professional bodybuilder, it's your job to nail every percentage. You're fighting for those extra 1-2%, right? I used to play professional rugby. I know what it's like. Every little percentage matters. Every minute of sleep, every minute of warm-up, all of these things count huge amounts. But if you're just an everyday legend, trying to do your thing, lose a bit of weight, look a bit better, feel a bit better in your birthday suit, do you need to get 100%? No. Chances are your life doesn't really work that well when you try and do those things. So what we need to try and do is figure out how we can add longevity to this process. And that means enjoying it, right? So if lowering the protein on a couple of days allows you to enjoy the process enough to keep it going long enough, all of a sudden, instead of losing 2 pounds in 2 weeks, you're losing 12 pounds in 12 weeks, right? That's a very big difference. And it's so much more sustainable, which means not only will you get a better result, you stand a much better chance of maintaining that result once you get there. So I like that idea. I think it's a really good thing for most people to do. And like anything, when you trade off some of the process, you trade off some of the result. But bear in mind that all of the most hardcore programs or fad diets and things like that, most of them come with loads of trade-offs, loads and loads and loads of trade-offs in your life, not in terms of the process, and you get shit all results in the end anyway. So you're better off saying, right, instead of doing the 100% thing, I'll do the 100% thing Monday to Friday, I'll do the 80% thing through the weekend, and you will get phenomenal long-term results. It's pretty much what we do with all of our clients. We have a couple of clients who really top the optimal levels, and that's because they've been training for so long and they need to get the next level of result. But typically this will work for, I would say, 95% of individuals. Folks, as always, if you've enjoyed the podcast, please like, share, and of course, drop me any questions that you have. I know I said I would do that third question, but I also said I was going to keep this short and sharp. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to chop that into probably Friday's podcast, actually, as a random question. But thank you so much to everyone who's already shared the podcast, who's liked the podcast. Again, if you're on Spotify, if you drop us a nice 5-star review, I would be very grateful. And like always, if you have any questions, drop me them, Xander_JLX on Instagram, or you can obviously send me an email. Up to you. I'll speak to you guys soon. All the best. Take care.